Welcome to the second session on theory of computation. In the first session, we were discussing about some concepts like the necessity of having theory of computation as a course in the engineering curriculum, especially for the computer science students, followed by a detailed understanding of what theory of computation in basic terms means to us. We were discussing at the last part of the session 1 about the various automation models that we do have. We do have finite automata at the base level, which stands as the basis for all the automata models, followed by push-down automata. And we have seen that push-down automata inherits all the concepts of finite automata along with the new concept that it could able to memorize. And we have seen the third automation model called Turing machine. Again, it inherits the properties of push-down automata, which in turn inherits finite automata, along with the newer concept to include bidirectional movement. So in order to better visualize this, we can have a concentric diagram of this kind. So in the midst of the concentric circle, you could see the finite automata, over which you have push-down automata, over which you have Turing machine. So I hope this diagram can give a better understanding of this. We know that modeling a machine is very important, and we have the models of the workflows that we want the machine to work with now. How do we communicate this to the machine? That becomes the next question. In this world, any real world entity, okay, be it a human being, be it a living thing or a non-living thing, anything and everything wants to communicate with each other. For example, these goats will communicate with each other in their own means. And we do have people trying to communicate with each other using their own means. But what is the common term that exists between these two? So they also wants to communicate. These people also wants to communicate, right? How do they communicate? What exists is the means of communication for them? Yes, we do have language. This language may differ to this and to this. But the accepted concept is that for a communication to happen between the real world entities, we are in need of a language, right? So as the computers also. So if we have decided on the modeling process and the flow that we need to communicate to the system, we are always in need of a language. So what's our next step? We need to understand in detail about what a language is and what are the different operations you can do with this language. So that's going to be the content for this session now. Assume you are new to learn a particular language. Let's say I'm a Tamilian, and if I don't know anything about Hindi, if I want to learn Hindi, what's the first step that we will do? Yes, of course, we'll start learning the alphabets that are there exist in the corresponding language, right? In Hindi, if you say e, that's what we'll be learning first. Once that is done, and if you are comfortable, then we'll move on for learning the words. So once the words are being learned, then you can go for framing your sentences, right? So these sentences, can you frame sentence as you wish? Can you form words as you wish? No, there is a restriction, right? The words has to be very meaningful. The sentences has to follow a particular pattern. So as the case in computer or language also. An alphabet set represented by sigma, which is nothing but the finite set of symbols that you can use in a language. Why is it finite? Because you cannot say it as infinite. You have to clearly define the system of what are the different symbols that it can use. For example, all of us have a English keyboard. Okay, so how many ever number of keys are there in the system, including with the shift and control or whatever? Only those are the keys that we can use. If you have a multilingual keyboard, then all the symbols that are there in your keyboard can also be used. So, but anyway, it is finite. So, finite set of symbols that you can use in the language becomes the alphabet, which is sigma. Then comes the word. So once we are comfortable with defining sigma for your language, then we have to combine the symbols that are drawn from sigma, but it should be meaningful, right? And hence what's the definition is meaningful collection of finite number of symbols drawn from sigma. So whatever symbol you are using here, it should be drawn only from the alphabet set sigma, not from anywhere else, right? So in Hindi, you cannot use and, you cannot use it. So that's what we mean by string, and the notation for that is capital W, or in most of the cases we also use small w also. Then next, how to measure the length of the string? Very easy. The number of symbols, okay, that are there in the particular word forms the length of the string. So what is the notation? Between two vertical bars, the word symbol has to be present. So either capital W or small w, both are used to represent the fact word. So within these two sets, within a set of vertical bar, if you write W, that means length of the string. There is always a necessity of having this empty string, right? For example, if a faculty member is posting a question for you, most of the time, what will be your answer? Yes, of course, it's a silence, right? So silence is most important. So if it could mean in either way, meaning that you may not want to answer or you don't need to answer. In any way, we say an emptiness we should be able to represent the emptiness in all languages. And that's what we call it as epsilon here. So the string, it's a string, special string whose length is 0. It doesn't have any symbols embedded within it. So coming to position of a symbol, what is the corresponding position the symbol will occupy? So x of I will denote the symbol in the ith position of a word. Let's say you consider this word basics. So what is the position of the symbol A? If you start the indexing with 0, the position will be 1. If you start the indexing with 1, the position will be 2. That's it. It's simple. What is a language? How do we now that we have learnt what alphabet set is, what a word is, okay, with that you can form the set of all sentences. That is different, right? But what forms the basis of your sentence? It is nothing but the words, right? So what is a language now? It is nothing but the set of all words or strings formed using sigma. So for this, there will always be a defined rule of how it needs to be formed. So a language is nothing but finite set of words or strings formed using the sigma. This is more important. You should not derive any character or use any character other than that present in sigma. So that's what is the language mean. Now let's go for some of the basic operations that you can do with this languages. Assume you have sigma 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What does it mean? Only these characters. So how does it look like? It's an octal. What is octal? Base 8, right? So it's an octal number. So the numbers start with 0 and ends with 7. So we do have 8 symbols that are permitted. It's an octal characteristic. So I'm defining two words. W1 is equal to 0, 113, and W2 is equal to 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. What is the length of W1? Count the number of symbols, it is 4. And then what is the length of W2? It's the number of symbols over here, it is 5. Right? Now coming to the position, what W1 of 2 represents? 2 represents the position. What is the symbol that you have in position 2? It is nothing but 1. Right? What is the symbol you have in position 3? 7 is in position 1, 1 is in position 2, and 2 is in position 3. Keep in mind, if the indexing starts with 0, the case is different. And I'm defining one more string W3, 8923. Is it permissible in this language? No, it's not string. It's not a string that is derived from sigma, because 8 and 9 are not components of sigma. And hence W3 is not a part of the language that is defined by using this sigma. If I say that the language can have strings only of length 4, right? What is the minimal string that you can have? It is all zeros. And then what is the maximum string that you can have? It is all 7, because 7 is the maximum digit that we do have in sigma. Coming to the different basic operations that we can do on the languages now. See, earlier we have seen what are the different operations that we can do on the words or at the string level. Now on the languages level, what are all the things that you can do? Yeah, some more operations if you take, which is more important and forms a basic for theory of computation. First comes your concatenation, right? You take two words indicated by W1 on W2, which are derived from sigma. The concatenation of these two strings, that is, you have to write W2 after W1. That's what is concatenation. So the notation being W1 dot W2, or you can simply write W1 W2 in either of the terms. This dot is implicit, and hence you can remove this also. And keep in mind, concatenation is not symmetric. That is, W1, W2 is not always equal to W2, W1. For example, if W1 is equal to ABC, it's a word. W2 is equal to DEF. What is W1, W2? It is ABC followed by DEF. W2, W1, first you have to write W2 followed by W1. So that's what we call it as concatenation, combining two words together. Suppose if I take W3 is equal to epsilon. If you combine an empty word with epsilon, always you will get the corresponding word as the answer. An example for that is W1 into epsilon is equal to epsilon into W1 is equal to same word W1. Yeah. Reversal, as the name implies, you have to write all the symbols in a word starting from the last proceeding towards first. So the notation used here is W1 power R. So the word W1 power R represents the reversal. For example, if W1 is equal to ABC, what is the reversal? So start from C, go back till A. So it is CBA. That's it. If you take out any parts of a string written in the same sequence as how it is in the original string, then we say it is a substring. We'll see with an example. W1 is equal to ABC. What are the possible substrings you can have? A is one substring. AB is another substring. ABC is another substring. But can you say that AC is a substring? No, because A and C is not there in the corresponding sequence. So that's what a substring means. The substrings are epsilon, because you mean if you are not including any of the symbols, we have epsilon, then you have A, then you have AB, and you have ABC. Coming to prefix and postfix. What is mean by prefix? The substring that you are considering from the starting of the string till some character is what we call as a prefix. And what is a proper prefix? It's nothing but the substring of a string whose length is not equal to the length of the original string, or less than the length of the original string is what we call as proper prefix. Now let W1 is equal to ABC. What are the proper prefixes? Yes, it is A, AB and ABC. Okay. But what are the proper prefix? You have A and AB, because ABC's length is equal to the word's length. So that should not be included as part of proper prefix. Suffix or proper suffix. You have to start picking the symbols from rightmost moving towards the left. Okay, similar to reversal, you have to start picking up the substrings from the rightmost end towards your leftmost end. And a proper suffix is one whose length is not equal to the length of the original string. That's all. You have this. What are the suffix that is permitted? C, BC, and then ABC. Now what is a proper suffix? It is BC and C. And coming to the different kinds of operations that you can perform on the languages, we have basic three logical operations that you can perform on languages: union, intersection, and a complement. So coming to the union operation, given two languages, L1 and L2. What is L1 union L2? It's nothing but the set theory which we normally apply. You pick in all the words that are there in language 1. You pick in all the words that are there available in language 2. Put it together without any repetition, because it's a set. So that's what we mean by L1 union L2. So formally, how can we define? L1 union L2 is equal to X. X is nothing but the word. Okay. This notation is very easy. Just follow me. So this curly braces represents the fact. Okay. So X represents the set of all words. How the word should be is defined further using this vertical operator. So X such that X, where should the X lie now? Either it should be in L1 or it should be in L2. That's all. In contrast to this, what is intersection? It should be written as L1 intersection L2, that is this reversal, which means both, right? So the word should be both in L1 as well as your L2. So how to represent? It contains set of all words X such that X is in L1 and X is in L2. Only if the word presents in both the cases we will accept, otherwise we will reject. Now coming to the third important operation, complement. So the complement is nothing but words that are not present in L. If you are telling that a language has a set of words, The set of all words that are not in that language but present in the universal language becomes the complementation of the language. So that universal language is represented by star. You can see here L complement L that is dash is equal to set of all words such that X is in star, which is universal language but not in L. Then difference. It's like a set difference. So the difference of L1 and L2, which is denoted by L1 minus L2. Right? So it will have the list of all strings that are in L1 but not in L2. That is, you have to remove the intersection of words between L1 and L2, and the rest that is pending in L1 becomes the difference. So it's the set of all words X such that X is in L1 but not in L2. What is a cross product? It is indicated by L1 cross L2. So cross product is nothing but the pairs of words that you can form from L1 as well as L2. L1 cross L2 is equal to set of words in the format X comma Y, where X is in first language. So this X has to be mapped to language 1 and this Y has to be mapped to language 2. So that's what we mean by cross product. This composition of two languages L1 and L2, it is nothing but the concatenation. Normally concatenation is for words, whereas the composition is for languages. That's all. So it's of the format XY, where X is in language L1 and Y is in language L. That's what we mean by composition of language. The last two but very important operations that we need to understand, because this is going to rule the entire theory of computation hereafter. There are two particular closure operations that we need to remember. One we call it as clean closure, another one we call it as positive closure. Clean closure is represented using star, which is the set L0 union L1 union L2 union L3. That is, you have to concatenate the given language 0 time, 1 time, 2 time, 3 time, and so on for any number of times, and you have to form the common set. That's what we call it as the clean closure, right? For example, let's say you have a program P, okay, or a function P, which needs to get executed for any number of times as and when it is called. That could be represented using clean closure, right? If this function it's not at all called, then we say it is L power 0. Then if it is called once, then we'll be executing from here and it will come here. So that is L power 1. Okay, if this function is called twice, that is if you are iterating twice, first time you'll start from here, end up here, then again you'll move back and then start from here and you will end up here. That is L squared is equal to L into L. So the first time you have to use the language, second time you have to concatenate the same language. Followed by L cube. L cube is nothing but what is L cube? L cube is equal to L into L into L, which is nothing but, so these two if you take, it is nothing but L squared. L squared into L. So that is the meaning of clean closure. So L power 0, what does it mean? Anything to the power 0, it is 0 in mathematics. Here, how do we represent that nullify? Yeah, it is by using this epsilon. So clean closure includes epsilon. So what are the components that it will get included in clean closure? You will get epsilon, you will get L, you will get L squared, and so on. In contrast to that, we have another closure, we call it as positive closure. So positive closure is represented by the symbol plus. Okay, so it means one or more concatenations. Starts with L1, L2, L3, right? So we don't include epsilon here. This is the component that we will normally include. It is L, L squared, and so on. So it won't have epsilon in its correspondence. This you can relate to any of the applications that we have in our programming language. Let's say we have an entry control and an exit control loop. So clean closure is an example for while loop and positive closure is an example for do while loop. Because in do while loop, we say that the set of statements has to be executed at least once, and at the end only the condition will be checked whether it is less than or greater than, and it will be taken you back, and by the end only you will decide whether you have to move to the starting or to continue with the rest of the statement. So that is what we call as positive closure, at least one iteration, which has to be much more important. But in clean closure, which is nothing but a realization of while loop, if you see, while condition is given here. If suppose if the condition fails for the first time, you will come out of the loop. You won't never execute. So which holds good for L power 0. Or if it happens once, if the condition is true, you will go execute once. And by the end, you will go back and check the condition. Again, if it is true, you go for L squared, or else you will come out. So that's what clean closure and positive closure means. So in short, clean closure is 0 or more concatenations. Positive closure is 1 or more concatenation. And we can write, in short, we used to say that clean closure is equal to positive closure union only one symbol, which is nothing but the empty string, which is not available in positive closure. Rest of the things, L1 is there, L2 is there, L3 is there. Only missing thing is L0. So in short, you can write like this: L star is equal to L plus union epsilon. So that is about the preliminaries that we need to understand before getting into topics of discussion. To conclude, what are the topics that we have covered in this session? We started with the discussion to arrange the basic automation models to better understand what is the basic modeling, which is finite automata, over which we have push-down automata, over which we have Turing machine. Then we try to understand the necessity of having language, and then we have started exploring the basics of language, followed by the different operations that are permissible both on the words as well as on the languages. Thank you.